to cover today is pass-through expenses, right? So again, before we cover what pass-through expenses, I just want to explain what it is, right? So I know in the past we've talked about common area charges, taxes, insurance, and so on. So there's some exceptions to common area charges. One of the biggest exceptions to that is water, for instance, right? So assume you have a shopping center, and typically, you know, in many shopping centers, there's one water meter, right? And that water meter is for one building. And then the landlord gets billed from the water authority for the whole building. Now, the question is, how do you split that water up between the tenants, right? You know, some instances, landlords have sub-meters where they have a reading company that goes out and reads the sub-meter. And then based on that reading, the landlord would bill the tenants based on the reading. In some cases, there are no sub-meters, and a lot of times the landlords just, I don't want to say arbitrarily, but they do bill back the water based on a percentage, right? And, you know, again, you know, if you have 3 tenants, you know, one tenant uses water only for the restroom purposes or lavatory purposes, and the other tenant uses water for washing dishes because it's a restaurant, for example, right? So obviously the restaurant would be billed a higher percentage, right? So it'd be 90-10, for instance, right? In that example, so that's an example of an expense the landlord would want to pass through, as opposed to consider that as a common area expense, because again, it's not common area, right? It's an expense that the landlord should be billing back to the tenants to be reimbursed for that fully. So again, I could walk through that example and show how to apply that example using UnitConnect. All right, so let me share my screen. All right, so again, we have our shopping center with 3 tenants. Each tenant has a product share, and we do have an expense. Like I said, let's assume it's water. Again, there could be other expenses that the landlord would consider as a pass-through expense, but in this case, let's just consider it as water. And the landlord received the bill for $525, and based on the tenant's usage, this is what the landlord came out as the share that should be billed to each particular tenant. Right, so coffee shop, again, they may use more water than an urgent care. And then a pizza store, again, they use water as well for different purposes. And then urgent care for just laboratory use. So we have 45, 45, 10, right? And then this is how the bill would be dispersed. So I'm gonna head over to UnitConnect and just again show an example of how to set that up. All right, so first thing would be we go into the vendors page. I'd click on the property and then all the vendors associated with that property. So again, since we're talking about water, I'd go into the water company, click on vendor accounts. So what I want to do first is I want to set up the expense pass through, right? So right now, this particular account is not associated with any units. So it means when I apply an expense on this account, I wouldn't be able to pass through to the tenants. So I'm going to click modify in this case. Right, so let's assume this is the account number and these are the tenants. So I'll just say, okay, this account number is tied with all these tenants and I'll apply the share. So 30%, 25, 15, and 30. That should be 15 and 30. All right.
Okay.
Click save. And charge description water. And income category would be water as well. All right, so we've set up the expense pass-throughs. So next time when we book an expense for this account, we would be able to pass through to these tenants based on these percentage shares. Now, to book an expense, we would go into properties, click on the property expenses. We would select the vendor. So in this case, it was Suffolk County Water. And as you see, this sort of came up on the screen for us, and the percentages are automatically populated. So if we say the amount is 525, the amounts will be updated. Charge description, water. Let's add the dates for the water. Say it's from 1/1/2022 through 1/31/2022. And an income category would be water. And we want to apply it to the invoice cycle of February 2021.
Okay.
Click add. The expense has been added. Now, if we go over to this invoice cycle, February 2021, so this water has been added as a charge on their invoice
Okay.
on every tenant, right? And again, the amounts are based on what the percentages that we've set.
Yep.
And that's how easy it is to pass through expenses with UnitConnect.
Fantastic. Thank you, Albert, for sharing that. And we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.
Cool. Take care. Thanks, Nathan.